Welcome to the Arc Junkies Podcast. My name is Jason Becker, and I'm your host. The mission of the show is to help, educate, and inspire the next generation of welders. Join me each week as I take you on a journey through the world of welding. With over 25 years of experience as a welder and fabricator, I bring my expertise to the table each week as I interview guests from all facets of the welding industry. From pipe welding to structural, underwater welding, and everything in between, we cover it all. Whether you're a student, a hobbyist, instructor, or a seasoned pro, this show's for anyone who's passionate about welding. Welcome to show number 264 of the Arc Junkies Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest joining me, Kevin Stone, a metal sculptor from Chilliwack, Canada. Kevin is renowned for his giant eagle sculptures and recently completed a masterpiece, a life-size replica of Drogon, the Game of Thrones dragon. Kevin's creative talent is unmatched, and it was an honor to chat with him about his process of transforming metal into stunning works of art using a welder, a few hammers, and some clamps. So sit back and relax and get ready to be inspired by the amazing work of Kevin Stone. But first, let's hear from our supporters. Today's episode of the Arc Junkies Podcast is brought to you by CK Worldwide, the standard in TIG welding. Are you looking for a powerful, versatile, and easy-to-use TIG welding machine? Then look no further than the all-new MT375 AC/DC machine from CK Worldwide, the ultimate solution for all your TIG needs. This dual-voltage TIG welding system is fully equipped with a dual-pump water cooler and a utility cart, making it the perfect solution for the on-the-go welding projects. The high-frequency arc start ensures a smooth and consistent start every time, while the easy-to-use interface with analog dials make it easy to get dialed in. But that's not all. The MT375 AC/DC comes with a patented steady grip foot pedal that quickly converts to a fingertip amperage control. This innovative design provides you with the best of both worlds, giving you the freedom to switch back and forth between a foot pedal and a fingertip control with ease. This package also includes a TL18 Trimline 350 amp flex neck torch with super flex cables, ground clamp, argon hose, and an accessory kit. Don't settle for anything less than the best. Get your hands on the MT375 AC/DC from CK Worldwide today and take your welding game to the next level. For more information on this machine, head on over to ckworldwide.com. You can also find a dealer nearby by clicking on the Find a Dealer tab. CK Worldwide, the standard in TIG welding. We're also brought to you by my friends at Outlaw Leather. Attention all welders, fitters, fabricators, ironworkers, and pipe welders. Are you tired of using flimsy, mass-produced gear that falls apart just after a few months? Then look no further than Outlaw Leather. Their custom welding hoods, bolt bags, rod pouches, and more are handcrafted with the highest quality materials to ensure they stand the test of time. They understand that your gear is your livelihood, and they want to provide you with the best possible tools to do your job. Their leather goods are built to last, and they take pride in each and every piece that they make. They even offer custom leather work as well. Just send your description to info@outlawleatherllc.com to place an order. And with their storefront location in Pasadena, Texas, you can even stop by and see their products firsthand. Not only will you be able to check the quality of their products, but you'll also be able to talk to their experts who can help you find the right gear. But even if you can't make it to their store in Pasadena, Texas, you can always check out their full selection on outlawleather.com. And you can use Arc Junkies in the checkout to get 15% off all their in-stock handmade leather goods. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. Maintenance welders, are you tired of using subpar welding rods and wires that just don't cut it when it comes to heavy equipment maintenance and hard facing? Then look no further than Rockmount Research and Alloys. Their welding rods and wires are specifically designed to withstand the rigorous demands of heavy equipment maintenance and hard facing. Their products are of the highest quality, guaranteeing high performance and consistent results. In addition to the welding rods and wires, they also offer a full range of products including abrasives, burrs, bits, and blades. And as a special bonus for listeners of the Arc Junkies Podcast, use code word ARCJunkies10 at checkout on their website, rockmountwelding.com, and you can get 10% off on all their burrs, bits, and blades. Take advantage of this great offer and stock up on all your metalworking consumables now. Don't settle for less. Trust Rockmount Research and Alloys for all your welding and maintenance needs. You can purchase all their consumables, rods and wires, welding chemicals directly through their website, rockmountwelding.com. Their products are trusted by professionals worldwide, and they're confident they'll exceed your expectations. Visit their website today and see for yourself why they're the go-to choice for heavy equipment maintenance and hard-facing welding. Get the job done right the first time, every time with Rockmount. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies Podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, so Kevin, I stumbled across, I think your profile, I think it was on Instagram. Just scrolling, I follow a lot of different welding stuff and like sculptures and artists and stuff. And I seen this big ass dragon. And I was like, there's no way that this thing is like legit real. And I clicked on it and I started watching, the build process on how you do this stuff. And I can't believe somebody's actually building something. So, I mean, like, where do you start with something like that?
Honestly, I start with Google. So when I got this commission, the commission came to me from Dollywood. So I have a 55-foot eagle that I built at Dollywood in Tennessee, out at Dolly Parton's Dollywood theme park. And I built that in 2000, I want to say 2011 or 12, something like that, 2011. And the Dollywood Eagle has been out there now on display for, over 10 years. And the client that commissioned me for the Game of Thrones dragon, he was standing in front of my eagle while his kids were on a ride, and he called me. And he said, "Hey, I'm standing in front of your eagle, and I want one. I want one of these big eagles. It's perfect. It's just what I was looking for." And so we started talking, and I said to him, I said, I can build anything you want. I can build, anything. And he's like, he thought about it for a while, and he's like, well, what about a Game of Thrones dragon? And around the time in 2009, I built a big Chinese dragon, a big coiling stainless steel Chinese dragon. And when I built that, or shortly after I built that, I really wanted to do a, kind of that European fire-breathing winged dragon. That was kind of on my bucket list. So when he suggested us do a big dragon, I was all for it. I was like, yeah, let's do a big dragon. But I didn't really know what I was getting into because I hadn't watched Game of Thrones.
Oh, damn.
So
yeah,
I had no idea of all the spikes and the details and everything that Drogon had. And
they actually quit making that show because of the level of detail and what it was costing for CGI to get those dragons to look so realistic. That and the dire wolves. They were spending so much in CGI that they were like, yeah, we can't just afford to keep this going, so we'll put a pin in it.
Yeah. So that's how I built it. So I actually printed a bunch of pictures. My wife and I binge watched the show, and then after binge watching the show, I started printing pictures and planning out how I was going to tackle this. So I'd print out pictures of his head, and then after his head was complete, I'd print out pictures of his body. And then I'm a visual artist, so I don't work with computers. I don't work with CNCs or anything like that. I do everything hand formed, handmade. And everything's cut by hand, everything's shaped by hand. Damn. And I just work off of pictures. So if there's details, I try to study those pictures for the details, and then try to recreate them in my head and visually think about how to make them, and then just start grabbing metal and making it. So
that's freaking nuts. Now, how do you figure out how to scale it proportionally? I mean, do you like draw everything out, or like? It's all by eye. Yeah. So how I did this particular one, because he's so big, is I built the head, and I ended up, as I was building the head, he went from my table, and I put him on an engine stand, and the engine stand for the head was perfect because his head's over 6 feet long. I think he's 9 feet with the horns or something like that. But the engine stand was strong enough to support him. Plus, I could pull the pin on the engine stand and rotate it from side to side. And then I could do the welding and things like that, work from one side to the other. So once the head was done, I moved him to the front of my shop, and I started him when I still had my hot rod shop. So going back, I did my artwork full time for about 10 years. I left the metal trades. I used to be a welder fabricator, did everything in the industry that you could imagine. And then I got the opportunity to do art. So I left that, and I did art for about 10 years straight. And then things were a little tough. Things were, I wasn't making ends meet for a while there. And then I was like, well, what do I do? Do I go back to work? Or I've got a full shop full of tools. Maybe I just utilize those. And I ended up opening a hot rod shop. So I had a hot rod shop for basically 9 years, I guess. I had a hot rod shop. And I had done several sculptures during that time. But when the Game of Thrones started, I just finished a big piece for Las Vegas. And then
a couple months later, I got the call for the Game of Thrones dragon, and I had brought on partners at my hot rod shop about maybe they'd been there a year and a half, not quite 2 years. I had these large pieces, and it didn't, had no room at the hot rod shop, and it wasn't really a thrill to my partners that I was focusing on artwork rather than the hot rods and stuff. They were getting a little pissy with me. And I thought, you know what, Michelle and I have busted our ass in this hot rod shop for a long time. Maybe it's time to let them take over and we go back and do my art full time. So that's what we did 2 years ago. We sold the hot rod shop to our partners, and we've been back to the artwork, doing it full time again. So back to the dragon, what I did was I was still at the hot rod shop. I pushed the head as far as I could in the shop forward, and then I went up on the mezzanine and looked down, and I visualized the long neck and the round body and tapering into the tail on the floor. And then I kind of visualized it, and I went down and I chalked it out using kids' chalk. So I just chalked it out on the floor and kind of drew it with the head sitting there, and just drew it from above using the mezzanine as a top view, and chalked it out on the floor. Then I went down on the floor and figured out that my plan is to build rings that would support the body. So the rings would taper, as the neck got fatter, and then the big rings that would make a ball for his chest, and then they would taper again for his tail.
Kind of like,
and then I would figure out
the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. And those not only support the structure of it, but allow me to wrap skin around it as well, and then do the sheet metal skinning and stuff. So it was kind of I have a strange way of planning projects out. I can visualize it in my head, so I can't seem to get it out of my head onto paper. I can't seem to get it out of my head and try to explain it in detail to somebody. I just have to follow my head and do it. It's like a picture in my head, and I know how to build it in my head, and then I just keep going back to that, and it stays with me the whole time. The whole project, that little image and step by step is kind of planned out in my head. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I've resolved problems by dreaming about it, because I'm so obsessed with thinking about how to finish something or how to do something. And then I'll wake up and it just comes to me. It's just like, oh yeah, that's how I'm going to do that. So
yeah, that's always been my big aha moments, or that's when I have my epiphanies. Is I'm either taking a shower or I'm trying to go to sleep, and I can't, because that's the only time that everything else kind of just shuts off, and I can focus, and my mind just kicks into not overdrive, but it just relaxes enough to where it's like, oh, that's what I got to do. Now I got it, and it clicks. You don't even think about it. It's like it happens at a subconscious level, and you're like, that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah. So that's what's been happening for me is, a lot of my projects are like that. I just obsess on them and I figure them out step by step, and it seems to work out really good that way.
Now that dragon's made completely out of mild steel, right?
Yeah, it's all there's a structural frame inside of it, and then it's all made out of, I think I used 2 or 2.5 inch square tubing and rolled rings with all that, and made all the skeleton in the rolled rings and out of square tube. And then the skinning itself is all done in 18 gauge mild steel. And
it's all, that whole thing is self-supporting. Once you put it in, you anchor it down. Yeah.
So the structural frame, the feet are made out of, I think 1.5 plate are the feet.
Damn.
And then the frame, the structural frame that hold the wings, they're made out of 12-inch steel pipe, Sked 40 or Sked 40 12-inch steel pipe. And then I built a triangulated structure up to what supports the wings, and the wings are sandwiched 1.5 plate with 10 1-inch grade 8 by 10-inch long bolts that bolt the wings together. So they're sandwiched. It's 3 inches of plate holding the wings on. And originally the dragon was designed to support the wings from his feet into concrete without his wings being on the ground. So his wings would have been elevated. And I wanted it engineered strong enough to support that. But the owner ended up moving from California. It was supposed to go to California, to his home in California. The original plan was to put it in the roundabout of his house. And then he sold his home and he moved to Florida and lived on a boat for a year. So the project kind of wasn't put on hold, but there was no home for it to go to. Yeah, so I had other projects and I kind of focused on them and I picked away at it. I mean, I kept doing little bits to it, but I wasn't in like a big rush to really, press to get it done. And then the plan was that he was going to build a home in Puerto Rico. And we thought he was going to move to Puerto Rico, build a house there, and that's where the Dragon would be going, is to Puerto Rico. And then he just got sick of living on the yacht with his family and waiting for this house to happen and stuff, and felt it was too far for business, so he pulled the trigger and bought a home in Utah. So now I've just relocated shops. So literally, like last month, I moved into this shop that I'm in right now on the 1st of the month, and my Dragon is still at the old shop. So I have the owner of the Dragon has hired a team of moving and people to wrap it and crate the tail and crate the feet and different things like that and get it ready for shipping. And we're actually going tomorrow with forklifts to move the wings from inside my shop to outside, so they can build supports for the wings to go on the low bed trucks. And the 2 wings are actually so big they're wide loads, so they have to have a pilot car and everything to go down the highway from BC, Canada, all the way to Utah.
Then you got to deal with customs.
There's it all has to be brokered through the border and everything. Like, it's a huge deal.
Customs is gonna have a field day with that.
Yeah. So
I had a buddy that was trying to bring welding jackets down from Canada into the FabTech show, and they held him up there for a couple of days. It was a mess. I couldn't imagine transporting a 53-foot Dragon across the border.
Yeah, so there's been lots of paperwork and lots of back and forth, lots of logistics. I hired a logistics company. So they've been doing all the logistics to arrange everything. And 4 trucks it takes to take it down there. It's a $40,000 move. So,
jeez, on top of the original cost for the build and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Shipping and handling's through the roof.
Yeah.
So when you build the structure, like the skeleton on the inside, how do you go about that process? How do you pick out okay, we're going to have, 1.5-inch thick material for the base plate because it's going to be this many square foot and it has to balance or ride on this, and then we're going to go up to a 12-inch tube, or how do you calculate all that out to where once you build it and add the final piece, it doesn't fall in on itself?
I figure out a structural frame that's going to fit inside the dimensions that I need to work with. And then really it's all based on, just experience. I was in the industry for a long time building commercial buildings, structural, shop fabrication, doing mining equipment and all different kinds of things. And just kind of a natural ability to engineer things that seem to meet every engineer's expectations. So I've actually had engineers come and look at my work after I've done it, because to try to work with an engineer is almost impossible. They have I haven't worked with an engineer that has any artistic talent. No. Not yet. Anyway.
You won't find it.
And so they just have this mechanical aspect to everything and can't see what you're trying to create. So generally what I do is I build it first and then have them, if it needs to be engineered, have them look at it. And then if they feel that it needs a little something here or there, then I'll add that in. But generally I've never had any issues with my engineering. They've all been happy with my work, happy with the welding, happy with the design. I kind of, again, it's just experience. I know where the balancing points are on pieces and how big the welds need to be, how big the material needs to be to support the structure. And it's always overkill. I always overkill it. If you overkill it, you can't go wrong. So
I worked at some of the theme parks down here in Florida, and Disney has a team of what they call Imagineers. And so they're like engineers, but they're also they have an artistic background. And it's funny talking to them because their engineer side kind of overrides their artistic side, and it just swaps back, and it's like talking to somebody that's bipolar. It's like, okay, just tell me what you want. Yeah. Tell me what you want, and then I can build it. You can have this, but you can't have that. We got to meet in the middle somewhere here. But it was pretty cool working with those people because it's a different relationship. Typically when you work with engineers, it's straightforward, black and white, 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah. And then when you work with artists, it's it's very fluid. And so to combine those two thought processes into one and try to build exactly what they're looking for, it can be painstaking at times.
It can be, yes, for sure. Yeah.
Now, on your most of your structures, especially on the Dragon, do you have access ports? Because you said that the wings are removable, and they're inch and a half steel on each part. Like, how do you get back in there and bolt everything back up?
Well, he has a fire system inside of him as well. So it's a propane puffer system all on remote control. And I had to engineer that inside of him as well. So, so he has a hatch in his belly that I basically just cut right through the scales and everything and just made a hatch in his belly with a piano hinge. And then you can climb up in his belly and you can change, I made it the propane tanks, so you can change them. They're manifold, 2 40-pound propane tanks can be in his belly, but it's also in a way that you can run a line out of one of his legs if you needed to and attach it to a outside source of propane. So because of that was, one of the major reasons, but his tail and his wings are accessible from the inside, the way you bolt his tail on and the way you bolt his wings on. So when they are bolted on, you just see a little 3/16 seam, and it almost looks like a weld seam when he's all bolted together. So you hardly even notice where he's joined. And his feet are removable as well. So when you anchor them to concrete and drill all your concrete anchors and hammer them in and tighten them all up, you just slip his feet back on, and they just go in with some, number 12 sheet metal screws and hold his feet on. And that's it. You can't even tell where his feet bolt on. So
that's got to be the hard part, is like, okay, we got to make this look really good, and then we got to cut it back apart for access ports and then like camouflage that out to where when we're done, you really can't see it. You just kind of, there's going to be a hatch there, there's going to be a visible seam there, but you try to make it as less visible as possible and as tight a fit as possible. I've noticed with the Dragon, it was all, like we said, mild steel, but you went through and you did like a flame treatment, like a patina on it.
Yeah, so we actually did some patterns right in the metal using, bluing and orange and blue effects using a acetylene torch. And, we'd do circle patterns. Circle patterns kind of made the most skinnish looking colors. And then when you start putting each panel is, most of them are smaller than 4x4 feet because you have to get into the hammer with them. And then you color treat each panel. And then as they all get put together, they just seem to have a really nice tone and texture to them. And it worked out really well.
Now, once you're done with it, do you have to clear coat everything since it's mild steel and it's going to be in Utah?
My initial plan was to blue it. Like I was literally going to, burn oil on it because Drogon's kind of black anyway. And then the pattern and the colors looked so nice when we were putting it together. Then I didn't want to burn oil over top of that and darken everything. And so that, I had done some test samples, and then I was looking into all different types of, clear coats and different things that I could use. And then I ended up using Penetrol, and I soaked the whole Dragon down and we painted the inside of them. So we just used trim-clad black paint on the inside, kind of outdoor black furniture paint, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then on the outside, to keep the patina, we just soaked them in Penetrol, and Penetrol eventually dries kind of like a clear coat. And but it seems to bond to the metal better than any type of paint product, and it really lasts in the weather. It's quite surprising. So
that's got to make it a lot easier than using a traditional clear coat or something like that.
For sure. It's Penetrol is you just brush it on heavy, and then and it goes on like basically it's like cooking oil. So it goes on like a cooking oil. It's really runny and stuff. So you want to keep, there's lots of brushing because, you want to brush the runs out and stuff like that. But it works really well. I've done sample pieces before I actually coated him. I took a piece of hammered skin that was heat treated and hammered, just a chunk of what looked like his texture in his skin. And I put it in Penetrol, and I put it outside all winter. And it sat outside, in the rain, in snow and everything. And it didn't have a bit of rust on it after the whole winter. So, I told the client, I said, it's not it's not, a perfect way of protecting it. There's going to be scales and areas that we just simply can't coat, that we can't get the coating into, that eventually will have surface rust on them. We both talked about having it actually, rather than being outside, having it in an indoor facility somewhere where the public can access it, because ultimately pieces that are that turn out that good. For me, I would like to have them, for the public to enjoy, not just some individual in his yard that, only him, his friends and family see. And the other thing is where he lives, he's in the mountains of Utah. So it's going to get beat up pretty good in the weather out there. He's up in the mountains, so you get 100-mile-an-hour winds up there and stuff. And
a lot of sand and all that.
So, yeah, and it's just not meant for that type of. I mean, I originally designed him for a California driveway climate, so I wasn't expecting him to be, either on the beach in Puerto Rico on a salty beach or up in the mountains of Utah. So the client did mention or did talk about possibly looking for a home, whether he flips it, sells it, or I don't know. But his plan at the moment is to install it out on his property in the mountains of Utah. So
you should have sold him like an annual maintenance plan that goes with it. Like, we'll come out there, we'll clean it up, we'll polish it up, and all that. You charge a premium for that.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, for sure.
Now, when you go through and do the texturing, like you have this picture of this dragon in your head. How do you figure out what tools you're getting? Because I watched some of your YouTube videos, and you've got like a power hammer that has like a receiving hitch welded to it, and then there's like a ball peen hammerhead welded to that to do like all the dimpling. Right. Like, how did you come up with the different ways to texture this? Because based off a picture, or whether you're watching the series on HBO and you see this texture, like how do you say, okay, if I'm gonna be using like I'm assuming like 10 gauge sheet metal, how do I form 10 gauge sheet metal to look like the skin of a dragon?
Right. Well, that whole dragon's made an 18 gauge sheet cold roll. And I don't work with hot roll at all. It's all cold roll. It's 18 gauge. And the reason it's 18 gauge is because I hand make everything and hand cut everything. And anything heavier than 18, I used to actually, my early sculptures, especially the stainless ones, were all 16 gauge stainless. And I still used to work those by hand with hand tools and like a hand shear and everything. And it's punishing. It's really tough to work with. And I went with 18 simply because my tooling that's what the tools I had, the capacity I had for my Harbor Freight type tools. A lot of offshore Chinese type tools. They're not rated for anything better than 18 gauge. So that's what I had to work with. I started off the head. So, I like to post everything I build and, all the steps and processes. I just share everything. And I was building the head, and my buddy that has a hot rod shop, he had a lot more metalworking tools than I did. And he had the old speed hammer. So that hammer that you were talking about, it's a 1910 New York speed hammer is what it's called, from the New York Speed Hammer Company. And they were a company around at the turn of the century in New York that built power hammers, and this particular one's a speed hammer. And it's clutch operated, foot operated with a clutch, and it's got basically like a crankshaft in it that drives a rod connected to a hickory piece of wood, and the wood is held in with leather strapping, and then that's the hammer part. So then it pivots on the hammer, and then it came to me with the tow hitch in there. So the tow hitch was already mounted in there. And it had a leather bag, but they had taken the leather bag out and they put rubber. So it's like horse rubber for horse mats. It's about an inch thick rubber, horse mat rubber. And then we cut circles and filled, I put 3 or 4 layers in the pocket that used to have the sandbag. And it works much better using the rubber underneath it. And then, of course, the dimple was too big with the trailer hitch that was welded in there. So that's why I added the ball peen hammer end to the end of it, because it made a smaller, more controllable hammer mark in the metal. And then it hammers so fast that when you put your foot down, you can move. You can do a small little hammer mark, or you can move the material around as it's hammering and do a larger dimple. So that's how I did all the texturing. My friend saw me hammering the head by hand on a sandbag, each piece. And he's like, dude, I got a tool for you. And he goes, you can just use it. Just come and pick it up. You can use it while you're building that. And we'll go from there. And then I think I used it for about 2 weeks, and I'm like, okay, I'm buying it off you. What do you want for it?
Yeah.
And then he gave me a great deal on it, and I bought it off him, and it's been a wonderful tool. I mean, when you think about doing a car part, even like an automotive part, and you hammer it out and you get the rough finish in it before you get it to the plenishing hammer, well, that tool will do your job in a fraction of the time, and it's very controllable, so it's an awesome machine.
Yeah, it's very similar to like the power hammers that blacksmiths use.
Yep,
you
not
can kind
quite.
of regulate
This one's
the
more of a
pressure and all that as you're going.
Yeah, it's not quite as controllable as that, but if you were to picture yourself just beating on a sandbag, it'll do that for you like 100 times faster. So,
and then you get a lot less wear and tear on your body at the end of the day.
Oh, for sure.
You can actually wake up and work the next day.
I'm honestly not sure I would have gotten through the complete Dragon if I was trying to do that by hand. I mean, it would have been an impossible,. Really.
No, because
I would have had
the entire body and the veins of the wings and like everything's got that little dimple on it. So I mean, you'd be wore out. You'd call up Able Body and be like, "Hey, I need 3 more guys over here."
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a lot. So when you're going through and you're building these pieces, do you start? So like you'd mentioned before that you started with the head. So now, do you start with the head and just complete that 100% to where like it's perfect? Okay, we're done with this. We can move on to the neck, and then the neck's done, and move on to the body.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I built the big T-Rex that I'm working on right now. So I'm building a T-Rex that, I mean, he doesn't have wings, but he's actually, I would say, almost 50% bigger than the Drogon. So he's huge. It's a 50-foot stainless steel T-Rex that I'm building with the same type of construction, same type of hammering for the texture on the skin and everything. But physically, he looks twice as big. So, yeah.
Just because of the height.
Yeah, the height, and I mean, the length is similar, but the girth of his body and the size of his legs and the size of his head, I mean, his head is almost twice as big as Drogon's head. So, yeah.
Wow. So like once you're done with that head, you don't have to do anything else to it, and then you move on. Or do you
no, I do. I like on this one. I bounced around a little bit on this one. I finished the head mostly. I had to use a car rotisserie to build the head. So this one went from my table to a car rotisserie to be worked on. And then the head was lifted on a like a, what do you call it? Like a high crane, or like it would kind of, but the square type, like a little jib crane, shop crane, or whatever you call them.
Just like an A-frame or a gantry crane.
Gantry crane, yeah. So I bought a Harbor Freight type gantry crane and used that to lift the head into place. He's got a lifting lug in the top of his head with a lifting eye. And then I built the same thing. I kind of did this time I used angle iron to frame them out. So I did angle iron rings, and then I framed out the angle iron rings into the shape of his body, all very similar to Drogon. And heavy, even his framework is all heavy stainless steel. So big dinosaur feet in 1/2-inch stainless steel plate. Again, 12-inch stainless steel tubing for his structural frame for his legs and hips and everything. And then everything else is built off that with 1/4-inch angle iron rings. So
now when you buy the material for that Dragon, are you buying like brushed, or are you buying like mirror finished stainless steel? Because like I've had raw stainless steel come to the shop and have to like polish that out, and it's a pain in the ass. But
I'm doing one right now. I'm doing a Mexican sculpture that's abstract, and it's 1/8-inch stainless, and I can't get that in a number 8 finish. I can't get that mirror polished, so it's all polished by hand. That was actually who was calling me when we were talking there, and then I seen a text message come. So he's antsy because he wants to see this piece down into Mexico by the end of February. And the piece is done, but we're just doing some final welding and polishing on it right now. So I've been, grinding welds for the last few days while my TIG welder has been building bead after bead after bead on this huge sculpture. So, and then my wife and my other apprentice are building the belly panels for the T-Rex right now. So the tail's all finished, the tail's mounted to the body. The lower legs are almost finished, and the only thing left after the belly will be the thighs. So I'll be building the thighs on the side of him, the big leg muscles on his thighs, and wireframing that all up so they can do all the templating and skinning. And then I think after that, I just have some veins on his neck and his tongue to finish. So probably I'm thinking 4 to 6 weeks, and I'll almost be done this T-Rex and ready to deliver it. So
That's got to be the hard part, is like that thighs. It looks like on a T-Rex there's a lot of detail. I mean, depending on which way, if he's crouching down or standing up, or if he's like mid-stride or whatever, I mean, there's a lot of detail. And you don't want to, I mean, that's the part where everybody's going to see, because that's like the focal point. That's where everything kind of comes and blends together, very similar to like Drago on the wings.
He's kind of got to have those like bodybuilder thighs. You want to see the muscles in his thighs, you know? Yeah, for sure. Plus, on top of that, he has all the hammer texture. So what I try to do is I try to shape the panels that the welds land where the muscles do, and then when the heat shrinking and stuff happens with the welds, you kind of get those indentations a little bit, and it really starts to follow the shape of muscles, and helps accent the shape of what you're trying to create. So
yeah, now because you're welding and you're beating on this stuff as you go throughout the whole process, and you've already polished everything to a mirror finish. Do you polish as you go, or do you just wait until you're done and be like, nope, polishing is going to be the last step of this process?
It is because it's so messy too. So once everything is fully welded and completed, mostly because of the scale of it, I don't grind all the welds down. I just I'll go back over it with grinders and polishing tools, and we'll just shine up all the welds so they kind of just blend right in with the sculpture, and all the welds will be left in place.
Okay, so they'll all be visible and just polished. It's just the same though.
Just polish. Yeah.
Okay.
Just polish the seam where it's dull. Yeah.
No, that's pretty cool. Like now, what's your polishing process? I would imagine you start off with something a little bit heavier, and then you just keep going up in grain.
It depends. Yeah, it depends. Like, generally lots of my polishing is done with, I used to always use the brown, the red, the blue Scotch-Brites, and then work my way to a polish. So that's still a method that I use quite regularly, depending on the pieces. We'll use flapper wheels, Scotch-Brite wheels. Dynabrade has been I've been kind of set up as an ambassador for Dynabrade. So Dynabrade has supplied me with some really great polishing tools, and arrow sanders, and air belt sanders and things like that, with lots of Scotch-Brite belts and blue and brown and red Scotch-Brite belts for cleaning up welds and blending and stuff. But, it just depends on what I'm polishing and where I'm polishing. You can use the sandpaper method and work your way down to 3,000 grit sandpaper and do wet sanding, and then do a final mirror polish after that as well. So it just depends on what areas I'm working at. I have a lot of polishing, I would say, tests ahead of me on this Mexican sculpture, because it's so large, and we have to grind off all the edges. So, you're grinding it off for 40, 60 grit. Then you got to blend that 60 grit out to a mirror polish on all the corners. And then you don't want to get into the main part of the material and have, scratches everywhere that you're trying to do the whole thing. So that's a challenge. And all the weld seams, you got to blend out all the weld seams and make them look like one piece of metal. And those are almost, with stainless, I don't care what anybody says, it's almost impossible to get a perfect flat weld seam on a very abstract sculpture. Like, it's really, really hard. I mean, you do your best to make sure that the fit up is perfect before TIG welding, and then you TIG weld it, but you always get a certain amount of shrinkage and heat shrinkage and that type of thing. You just do your best that you can and make it look as best you can. And that's all you could do, really. So.
Yeah. Especially on, like, if you're not doing a 90-degree corner or anything, or like a 45, it starts getting really difficult when you got to start blending different textures and grain, profiles and all that stuff. Like we did a bunch of that stuff out at the theme parks. Like, everything was mirror polished, because if it's mirror polished, it can't pick up bacteria. So that's a lot less cleaning that they have to do. And then as the guests are walking through and they put their hands on it, a lot of times it's just repolishing everything and keeping it all slick out and smooth. Yeah. But it's cumbersome.
I was in the food and dairy industry for quite a while, doing a lot of TIG stainless, building brewery equipment and things like that. So that really did give me a lot of experience towards the metal finishing of stainless, which really helps. And the welder that I've hired is a young guy. His experience was also in the brewery industry, building sanitary grade brewery systems and stuff. So we both have that background of polishing and cleaning, and you're not quite to the mirror level. You're not doing a whole lot of mirror finishing, but definitely like a 2B finish and grain finish that's a sanitary grain finish and sanitary welding and all that kind of stuff. So,
okay. Now, how many people do you have working in your shop with you? Because it looks like
just
you're operating on a skeleton crew.
We are, yeah. So it's just me and my wife who started the Drogon completely. Most of all the projects that you see previous to Drogon was just me and my wife, or just me. And then last January, I hired 2 young guys to start helping me last January when I was building Drogon and started the T-Rex. And Josh has stayed with me. One of the young guys moved away. He moved to Saskatchewan with his family after a short period of working with me. And now Josh has been with me for a year. And he's just 20 years old, out of high school, did his welding in high school. And I've put him now, registered him in the apprenticeship program, and he's doing his apprenticeship underneath me now. And then when the other young fellow left to move away, I hired another young fellow, Brandon, who's been with me ever since. So Brandon's been with me, I think, more than 6 months now, probably 7 or 8 months. I guess Brandon's been with me, and he was already a B-level TIG welder. And actually worked for the company that I used to work for many years ago, separated by about 15 or 20 years. But he was working for the company in the brewery business. I had just posted on social media that I was looking for a skilled TIG welder that was familiar with stainless, and he applied and had the background that I was looking for, and he's been with me ever since. So,
now, did you explain in that job post what they were going to be working on, what they were going to be doing?
Well, locally, everybody knows me. So as soon as I put an ad out, I had lots of replies. I honestly, I get people messaging me from around the world quite regularly, wanting to work for me for free, even just to be a part of building these big monsters that I create. So,
all right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Strong Hand Tools. Are you tired of using flimsy, low-quality tools that just don't get the job done? Upgrade your toolkit with Strong Hand Tools. Strong Hand Tools are designed with precision and durability in mind. Their products are engineered to make your work easier, faster, and more efficient than ever before. Whether you're welding, fabricating, or working on a project at the house, Strong Hand Tools has got you covered. From their innovative MagTab magnetic holders to their unique Rhino tables, Strong Hand Tools is dedicated to providing you with the best tools for the job. And the best part? Right now, they're offering a special promo on their website at stronghandtools.com/promo. You can get 10% off all their tables and 5% off all their 5/8 tooling. So don't wait any longer. Head on over to stronghandtools.com/promo and start building your dream toolkit with Strong Hand Tools. You won't regret it. We're also brought to you by Everlast Welders. Everlast offers a wide range of high-quality, reliable welding machines that are designed to meet the demands of any welding project. From TIG and MIG to plasma cutting and stick welding, Everlast has a machine for every application. But that's not all. Their products are made with the latest technology and advanced features to make your welding experience smoother and more efficient. Plus, Everlast Welders offers a comprehensive warranty and expert customer support to ensure you have the best experience possible. So why settle for less? Invest in the best and make your next welding project a success with Everlast Welders. Visit everlastwelders.com to learn more and see their full line of welding equipment today. And don't forget to get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG Torch upgrade when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal when you use Arc Junkies in the comment section at checkout. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. Now let's get back into the show. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, that like the stuff that you do is highly impressive. It's very cool stuff. My buddy David Madero, he built a sculpture, I guess, for the president of Mexico, and it's the logo of the Mexican flag. So it's got like the eagle with the snake in his claws.
I've seen
very
that
detailed and like just like
Yeah.
meeting people like y'all. It's really cool. The fact that you can do this out of metal, because like I have a structural steel background, so like I'm used to I-beams, angle iron, square tube, channel. Like I welded that stuff up. I've done a little bit of ornamental, architectural, some theming stuff when I did, worked out at the theme parks. But it was never my idea. They were like, here, this is what we need you to do. So for you guys to be able to look at a piece of, or a bundle of scrap metal or a bundle of steel and say, that's going to be a dragon in 2 years. Or, that's going to be a 30-foot tall T-Rex when I'm done with it.
Right.
I can't see that. So it's really cool to talk to people like y'all and, just to kind of pick your brain. Now, does the crew that you're working with now, do they kind of, Are they kind of starting to see the vision to where, you know, like they're a little bit ahead of you because they understand what's going on in your mind?
No.
Or is it like they can't start working until you show up in the morning?
I can't. I don't know. I mean, I think when it comes to art, you can teach a person to fabricate. You can teach a person to weld. You can teach a person all the little Chinese secrets, I call them, to you know, making your life easy when you're fabricating. But the artistic end of it is you just can't teach art. You know, you either have it or you don't. You know, some people are amazing artists. There's so many talented artists out there. It seems like there's more and more all the time. But when it comes to trying to teach somebody, and you could be the best skilled fabricator, the best skilled TIG welder, the best, you know, it doesn't matter. When it comes to art, it's, you know, and of course, it's in my brain. So, you know, unless there was a way for me to somehow, you know, project that image that's in my head out, the only thing I can do is just teach it by day by day. This is what I need. This is the way it should look. That doesn't look right. Let's fix it. You know, that's how we approach everything. So, you know, they're learning. I mean, my Josh, for instance, does the templating now with my wife and the panel fitment. And he's gotten really good at it. Like he knows what it needs to have. You know, if there's too much overlap, it's going to have a gap, and you know, just things like that, how the texture should be, and you know, how big the dimples should be, and all that kind of stuff. So he's really mastered that. You know, he's probably faster at it than I am now because he's a really good apprentice. One of the
he's 20 and he's obviously got a passion for it. So he's going to move, you know, a little bit more.
He's very passionate about what he does. So yeah, I think he's got a lot of potential to be able to do this on his own in the future. So yeah. So, and Brandon, you know, Brandon is, you know, I don't give Brandon enough time fabricating yet because I've just been so busy just making him weld. So he's just been on the end of a TIG torch almost entirely since he's been working for me. So
now, do you TIG everything together, or do you like switch out? Because like you said, you're doing stainless. Are you doing stainless MIG?
Everything stainless is TIG, and everything mild steel is MIG, basically. So yeah, I don't like when I'm working with stainless. I work with a lot of mirror polished stainless, and splatter is just a nightmare. So we don't wire feed anything. It's all TIG.
Okay, yeah. You got to look into the pulse machines because it'll do a spray transfer out of position, so it comes out in a very just like a hiss. So it's straight liquid, and it doesn't shouldn't give you a whole lot of spatter. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I do have all the best pulsed machines. I just haven't really set them up and worked with them a whole lot yet.
Oh, you got to call your rep up and be like, "Hey, man, show me how to do this."
That's right.
It'll put you probably 50 to 70% ahead as far as like your welding time compared to TIG welding.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And they've got like pulse on pulse functions and all that. So it's called like MIG like TIG. So it'll actually just spray it in there, and it'll look like a TIG profile.
Wow. Yeah, I have a brand new, what did I buy? A 355 pulse. So I've got the brand new Miller 355 pulse, but I haven't set it up with stainless yet. I bought it only for the reason that I use heavy material, and I didn't want to be TIG welding heavy material, right? So I bought the 355 literally just to burn big wire. So
you can throw some like 035 in there, throw a bottle of Trimix, and set it to the pulse function, and just bzzz, and it's got a really cool sound, and it's a lot faster travel speed too, so you don't have to worry about as much distortion as you typically would with TIG welding, because TIG welding is limited to like travel speed. Like you can crank it up and go through, but you can also like burn and sugar it, and like you want to avoid all that with stainless.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's something I never really thought about. It's always just been, TIG is clean and just keep with the TIG, right? So.
Yeah. No. So, like, what was the first piece that you ever? Or actually, hold on. I want to backtrack a little bit because you were talking about being an artist. Were you an artist as a kid? Did you like do sculptures or painting or drawing or anything like that?
I was drawing on furniture with crayons before I could hardly walk.
I did the same thing, but I'm nowhere near an artist. I colored the walls.
Yeah. So my earliest memories of art was, let me think. Obviously, I like to draw as any kid does with crayons and stuff like that and color. But I had I think my dad was a doodler and a sketcher kind of thing, and my uncle was a little bit of an artist. So they both had a little bit of art background. But I had a babysitter, an older teenage boy that used to come over and babysit me when I was young. And he was kind of a nerd, I guess, for his, for the day in the early 70s, glasses, tall, skinny guy. And he was a really good artist, and he used to sit there with me for hours drawing cars. So C-cab hot rods is what he really liked to draw, were the old C-cab hot rods with the engine sticking out and a blower motor and big fat tires and the shadowing on the tires and stuff. And so I would have to give a lot of credit to him, because he used to draw these cars all the time, and I was always interested in drawing and art. And that was at a really early age, like we're talking, 6, 7, 8 years old. And then from 8 to 12, I started drawing a lot of fantasy art like Conan. So my dad got me onto Conan, and he used to read Conan magazines, and I started drawing, Conan. And, of course, every kid back in those days loved the girls that were in Conan with their bikinis and things like that. So Red Sonja magazines, Conan magazines. There was Eerie magazine and a few other monster magazines, even Mad magazine. I used to copy the art and draw the art in those things. And I would look at so that's kind of where I'm good at visually. I'd look at a small drawing and then make it full size, or the size of the page that I was working on, off of a little small drawing. So that's kind of probably what gave me a lot of technique that I have, where I can just look at something and replicate it in a larger scale. The other thing that I was big into is I've always been a car guy since I was a kid. I grew up in an IGA grocery store / Texaco. So my parents had a grocery store that was also a Texaco gas station. And in the early 70s, where we were located up the street a few miles, was this guy named Mike Marks. And he got a hot rod shop in the early 70s, and they had all these, crazy blown street rods and cars that did wheelies, and hot rods and Model Ts with blower motors and all these things that would come into our gas station when I was a little kid, riding around on my tricycle, seeing all these cars. And I was obsessed with cars from an early age. I mean, I could, at 9 or 10 years old, I could see headlights coming down the highway, driving with my parents, and I could tell them what that car was just by the reflection of the headlights, because I knew how far the headlights were apart or where the marker lights were located. And I could tell if it was a Chevelle or a Mustang or a Volkswagen Beetle or whatever it was. I could just, I just was obsessed with cars. And that, of course, led into a lifelong of being obsessed and being broke with project cars and working on cars, and eventually owning a hot rod shop and taking it professional, and going professional with it. But it's still a passion of mine. I have a bunch of projects sitting out in the shop right now. I've got a 54 Buick that I've been building over several years. I haven't worked on it in years because I've been so busy with my sculptures, but it's got a full custom chassis that I built, and twin turbo LS going in it, and mini tubbed, and all the best of the best parts in it. And I just picked up a 70 CUDA from Saskatchewan, and it came with all the new replacement AMD sheet metal. So I've got that project ahead of me. It's sitting on a rotisserie, and then a friend of mine dropped off a 69 Roadrunner, and that is his brother's car. And he's just storing it at my shop, but he's like, it's for sale. And he keeps telling me, it's for sale. You could probably pick it up better.
My stepdad got a completely original 1971 Plymouth Roadrunner under the blanket. Like he's got to go back through and restore the engine. Like he had it, when I was growing up. And he got to a point where he's like, okay, I just need to take everything apart and rebuild it. So, like, I'm supposed to get out there and weld some body panels and the floor pans, because a lot of it was sitting in my grandfather's shop, and it caught on fire. He did my grandfather did antique restoration, or antique furniture restoration, and they had a fire. So the car was stored there at a time, so it's got a little bit of damage to it. But I'm supposed to go out there and do the floor pans and all that other stuff, and like he wants to get it back up and running on the road. But yeah, that's a badass car. We have this thing called Old Town down here in Central Florida, and every Saturday night they do like the classic cars. And I think the
Nice.
cutoff was
Yeah.
like 1969, like throughout my whole childhood. And his Roadrunner was a 71. So he was never able to get it out there and go through the loop. One time he was able to sneak in somehow. And, but he wants to, because they've kind of raised the age limit now because antiques, have gotten older. So he's eligible now. So he wants to get that car up and running so he can take it down the strip.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And then just, a couple of weeks ago, my brother-in-law, my ex-brother-in-law, basically the uncle of my boys on the mother's side, he's had a car since high school, and I've always liked them. And it's a 1968 Buick Skylark convertible. And I was going to make a GS clone out of it. So the 455 4-speed convertible Skylark, which is kind of like a Chevelle, basically. So that was a kind of a bucket list car that was always in the back of my brain. And then he was getting rid of his, and he's had it for 30 years. I've known the car for 30 years, and he was, it needs a restoration, but he was just flipping it, and he was only wanted $3,000 for it. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to pass that up. It's almost a rust-free car. Doesn't need a whole lot of sheet metal work and interior and a new top, and it's already a running, driving car. So that's, kind of tucked away. Maybe I'll have a father-son project down the road with one of my boys down the road.
There you go. It's always good to have something to tinker around on the garage, the old project car.
My 54 Buick is, that's a multi-six-figure car when it's finished, and that's the one I really want to focus on and get finished. So
there's some incentive behind that one.
Yes, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm too deep into it to get rid of it now.
So what was the first like sculpture piece that you did? How did that whole thing come about?
So when I was working for the brewery company, building breweries and microbreweries and stuff, the foreman at the time asked if there was anybody that was artistic on the shop floor, and they wanted to build a gargoyle. So they were just thinking something they could put up on the rooftop of the building to catch people's attention and also
like
show
the
off
old, like stone gargoyles from way back.
Yeah, like the big bat-winged kind of gargoyle, and I just made my own version of it. You can see it on my website, and I think maybe if you Google me, you might see some pictures of it on there. But that was my first piece. It was just made out of out of the scrap bin in the shop, and it was like 6 feet tall and had an 8-foot wingspan, and it stood on its own. It had a tail and bat wings and kind of big goofy triangle teeth in it and stuff, and I never did totally finish it, and it ended up coming back into my life like 15 years later because the original person that bought it, so I left that company and they still had it, and then eventually they sold it to a local businessman, and then he went through a divorce, and then he ended up selling it to a local what do you call it? Like a Mr. Liquidator type place. And they had it at their liquidation facility, like almost like furniture liquidation. And they ended up with this sculpture. And then they messaged me and asked what it was worth. And I said, well, I mean, really, it's worth whatever somebody will pay for it,
It's worth millions.
But I had never signed it. So they asked if they could bring it out to my shop and just for me to sign it, and I just weld my name into it or something. So I did that for them. And then they said, can we just leave it with you since you're the artist and you take a commission if you sell it for us or whatever. And so I hung on to it for a while, and nobody really was interested in it. And it was taking up room in my shop. So I asked them just to come and grab it, good luck selling it or whatever. It wasn't really, to me, that important at the time. And then out of the blue, one of my clients came back to me after I had let, this other person take it back and said, I don't have room for it. One of my our clients said, hey, what happened to that gargoyle you had? And I said, oh, well, the client took it back. They have it. It's still for sale. And he's like, oh, well, I'll buy it. So I hooked them up, and he ended up buying it and still has it to this day. So
very cool. Yeah, you should have kept that and put it out in your yard or something. Have you ever built anything for yourself?
No, I haven't. Just cars.
Just cars?
Just cars. No artwork.
You get one of those sculptures in your front yard, then you got everybody stopping by and, hey, where'd you get that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you can't get any work done.
When I first was doing my art, with my big Chinese dragon, I was out on a farm, and I was working from home on a farm with a big shop on my farm. And I had my Chinese dragon on display in my yard. I had a 40-foot stainless steel eagle on display in my yard, and I had a 30-foot eagle on display in my yard, and then I had an 11-foot raptor, like the bones of a raptor, kind of like those balsa wood kits that you put together. Yeah. I had made one out of stainless steel just to be different. And it was about 11 feet. And so I had all of that in my yard. And so, of course, my local town, you know, the word spread, and I totally turned into a tourist attraction. Everybody came to my yard like a sculpture park. And the dragon was huge. I mean, the dragon and eagle, the eagle was 40 feet and 6,000 pounds. The dragon was, in total, was 85 feet, but he was coiled. So coils went 12 feet in the air, each coil. And then he was about 35, 38 feet long, coiled on a stand. And then I ended up becoming part of like a local artist tour, like self-driven tour. They had the city had brochures with me on their self-driving tour to visit as one of the destinations. Drive by your house. Yeah, and I ended up putting a donation box out there, and I put a sign at the end of my driveway because everybody used to come to my house and knock on the door and ask me questions. So I over time figured out that, you know, to avoid all this question asking, I just put a big write-up. So I had these prints done, and I made a big kind of a sign station at the end of my information station at the end of my driveway with a little roof on it, and a big write-up about all my work and you know, explaining my work and what it was made out of and how long it took to make and how big it was and all the details and everything. And then I had a donation box there. And one summer, we figured there was probably 30,000 tourists in our yard, and about $5,000 or $6,000 in donations in the donation box just from one summer of tours. And we used to, even from Vancouver, which is an hour and a half away, we used to get bus tours with the Chinese and everything coming up, and they'd unload in my yard and walk around and look at the sculptures and then load all back up on the bus and drive off to their next destination. So I used to get school tours, you know, school classes coming out, and I would always meet with the classes and talk with the kids and stuff like that. And we still do that now, even though we're not on the farm anymore. We do have the the junior and senior metalworking classes from the high schools come out and visit us, and I usually talk to them, and so that's been quite popular with the local schools. They all like to come out and visit Michelle and I, and bring the students to see my works. And just recently, in fact, just in the last several days, one of the schools is asking me to come and visit one of their shop classes and talk to the kids in school rather than, you know, doing the shop tour out at my shop. So they're doing a project, and they wanted me to come in and look at they're doing a grizzly bear / barbecue type smoker or something like that, but it looks like a grizzly bear on the outside, and it's a big smoker, and they want me to come and give them some tips on how to fabricate some of the items that they're wanting to do with the smoker, and just, you know, visit the kids and talk to the students and stuff. So,
that's really cool.
Things like that that's really cool. And I like to be involved in helping, you know, the younger generation get involved in the welding and fabrication trade, have a variety of options. So don't just, you know, look at one source of trade. You know, like obviously here in Canada, one of the best paying jobs you could have is being a pipeline welder, going out to camp and you know, and being up in the oil sands, doing pipe and stuff. But you know, that's a tough job, and it takes a certain type of individual that wants to be away from home in camp, and you know, it's kind of like, I call them the roughneck crews, right? So they're a tough job, and not everybody's cut out for that. But you know, I've worked in all the industries. I started off as an iron worker. I was a commercial iron worker. That was my apprenticeship. Basically, when I finished my welding, I, you know, stick welding and everything, and then it was iron working and doing commercial steel, and then the commercial steel, I went into shop fabrication, again doing commercial steel, and then as I got kind of bored with the commercial steel end of it, just doing beams and stuff all the time and stuff, I got into mining equipment, which was a little more involved, and, you know, building and designing mining machinery and mining equipment, heavy plate work and, lots of hardening, working with hardened metals and
hard facing and all that.
All that hard facing,
like rock
different stuff,
and then milling and all that, mining.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff, and then I was back to I missed the climbing and the steel work, and I missed being up in the air.
It has
and
that
so
effect.
I went back to that, and then of course my first kids came along, and my wife at the time didn't want me, away. I was, away quite a bit doing commercial buildings out of town and stuff like that. And then there's the danger factor. And she was really always worried about me being up in the steel and stuff. And then I was kind of thinking, well, it'd be nice to be around the house for the kids. I've got my first boy was born, and that's when I came back, and I actually ended up working for BC Ferries, and I was building commercial transport ferries for the local ferry business here in Canada. And I was doing that for, I think about 4 years, I guess I was with BC Ferries. And then there was a bunch of political issues, and, it was the jobs that we were working on became a political war here for the politics. And 400 or 500 of us were losing our jobs because of the politics that was going on with the BC government. So I knew all of this work was coming to an end, and there was going to be huge layoffs, and all these welders were going to be looking for jobs. So I actually quit early and went and got a job doing the food and dairy equipment and brewery equipment. And that was a nice change, nice clean work. You're in a white smock, basically, doing nice clean stainless work.
All sanitary work.
All sanitary work. And I really enjoyed it, and I loved it, and I got really good at it. And then that just kind of led into my artwork from there, really, is how it happened. So
yeah, I didn't realize that welders actually work in sanitary conditions. We actually did a tour down here. There's a facility they make like nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals and all that stuff, but everything in there is completely welded. They do a lot with CBD, like all kinds of different stuff, and it's like a complete sanitary environment. And to go in there to tour the facility, because it was like, I'm trying to find jobs for my students that are welders, and this company needed welders. You got to put on like little booties, the little bunny suit. I had to put a beard guard on, a little, cap and everything. And like, that's how the welders show up to weld. They put their hood on, and then they'll do all the TIG welding, and it's all stainless. It's all clean. Like there's no grinding. Everything is complete, 100% sanitary, food grade. Everything's got to be like completely polished to a specific finish. And I was like, man, I had no idea this part of the industry exists. I thought they just built that somewhere else and just moved it all in. But no, this company, as they're expanding and growing, they're doing it all in-house. And like I said, you're running around in a bunny suit. Yeah.
And it's a very unique, like for me, it wasn't quite that sanitary in our shop building the stuff because we were just doing brewery stuff. But if we went out and did on-site repairs, so I actually worked in some of those pharmaceutical repair places, and there was a place that we worked at that we did a lot of repair work on their tanks and their equipment, which was a rendering plant. And that was kind of a nasty place to work, but it was all sanitary. And they used to render animal fat into pharmaceutical products. So
that smelled lovely.
It did when you lived, like they'd have everything clean for us. All these tanks were totally cleaned out for us, but that stuff gets into the metal, and so as soon as you strike an arc, it's like it's coming out of the metal, and even with a mask on, you can smell it. Yeah, it's nasty stuff. Yeah.
Oh man.
And I've done a lot of work for places like Miller Brewing and stuff. The Miller Beer Brewing and stuff. They'd have their tanks shipped to us and repaired, and sometimes they'd have a crack, and it would go undiagnosed. One of them was the worst ones. It was this huge, I don't know, like a 400 barrel brewery tank that was like a mash tun that the mash would sit in and ferment. And they had a crack for I don't know how long, and they didn't notice it. And it was going into the lower skin and trapping down under the original on the inside skin and going into the outer skin and being trapped in the bottom of this tank. And then when they found it, we realized we had to cut the bottom of this tank off to do the repair properly. and all of that mash and whatever else had gotten seeped I'm thinking over months, maybe even a year. And there was, I kid you not, probably 400 to 500 pounds of maggots that came out of the bottom of that tank when we cut the skin off. And there was no place for them to go. They were just breeding in there, and the only exit was small cracks in the stainless. So
they can't squeeze themselves out.
How they were breeding in there, I don't know. But there was we had to cut it open in our parking lot and pull the skin off this big tank, and they came flowing out, and we were using brooms to push them down the drains. We were using shovels to put them in like garbage bins. There was like garbage bin after garbage bin full of white little maggots. It was, and the smell, of course, too, just nasty.
Shit, no wonder you got into metal sculpting, shoveling maggots all day.
Yeah, that was quite the job, that one. Yeah.
See, with the school, one thing, if you're going to go back there, my buddy Kyle Linko does a dyno camp. So every year he cuts out like the skeletal frame, kind of like what you had there with the Velociraptor, but he does like a T-Rex, and I think he's got a Brontosaurus, but he cuts it all out with a CNC plasma cutter, and each student gets a kit, and they go through and they assemble it, they tack it, they weld it all up. We did something very similar, so he sent me the cut files to our school, and we opened up a new facility. And I took that, that small scale frame. I think that, it's probably about a 12-inch tall Tyrannosaurus Rex, and we built like a 6-foot tall version. So I just blew everything up. I scaled everything up, but it was all cut on the CNC plasma cutter. And I want to say we did it out of like 1/4-inch plate, and now it sits at the front, entrance of the school. But if you were to do like you do everything by hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be a tricky one. I was going to say if you could like I could send you that file. And then you could either have the instructor cut them all out, and then you could show up and show them how to assemble all these things and just kind of get them interested in building the artwork.
That's a great idea. I'll talk to him about that, because how I did mine, so I had the bones, how it's like bone cut files. Mm-hmm. So I had the bones when I did mine. So mine was 11 feet long. It was the Velociraptor one. And how I did that was painstaking. So I had the bones doubled, so each bone was 2 of each one. I had them double cut out of 18 gauge sheet metal or 16 gauge sheet metal, and so I had 2 of every single bone made, and then I boxed them with 1-inch stainless strips. So I took sheared 1-inch stainless strips, and then I put the 2 bones together, and I started at one spot, and I just shaped that strip all the way around the 2 bones, tacked it every inch and then every 1/2 inch, and then I TIG welded the corners of every single bone and made each bone I think they were about 1.25 inches thick, and all done in just sheet metal stainless, and then TIG welded. Then I ground every single TIG weld off and did a brushed finish on every bone so you couldn't see the welds. And that's what gave it the thickness, because if you were to make it out of 1.25 inch plate or something, the thing would be like a 2,000 pound.
Yeah, it's a lot lighter than it actually looks.
So that was the way I figured out how to do one big, but still have the thickness that the bones looked really cool. But that took me. I think I must have spent 2 or 3 months, making all the bones and polishing and grinding all the bones before I put it all together. So a lot of hours in it. Yeah.
You can. Once we did the dyno camp, I actually went to Harbor Freight. And they have, like you were saying, the balsa wood projects. So there's there's a tank, there's a truck, there's a helicopter, like a bunch of military stuff, fire truck. Like you could, so as a welding instructor, like if you wanted to put like a kit together for these students, I needed to build a cut profile out of these. So instead of drawing them, you can die chem them, and then you can throw them on a printer, and then scan them, and then you can convert that scan into a PDF, and it'll maintain its original shape. And then you can just export that into a cut file, so you can cut them out, or increase the size or whatever. So that was that's what I was planning on getting into before I left the school, just to build like these little, miscellaneous parts, just to show people like there's a sequence of operations you got to follow. Tack welding things up so you don't get distortion and all that. Yeah,
that's really cool. They make bombers and everything like that. So that's
and
cool.
They're like 99 cents a piece. I think I picked up like a dozen of them. There's a monkey and an eagle, not like the eagles that you built. That thing's insane.
back in the day, I found there was some free websites that had those files for that were already converted to cut files. So you could just go on a website and pay $2.99 or whatever and download the cut file for those. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think Spider Cam or Spider Plasma or something like that. There's one of them.
Sure.
You can download a bunch of stuff off there. But I think it's really cool that you cut everything by hand instead of, doing like a 3D rendering or, working it out in Google SketchUp and then converting it to a cut file. You do everything by hand. And then take that and clean it up, build a left and right side, match it up and everything, blend them to where they're symmetrical, and then then you go through the whole texturing process and put it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. With the birds, for instance, usually I start them with I'll start with a stand, a working height stand. So a 4 or 5 foot tall stand. Then I'll build a structural frame out of, usually it's like 1-inch steel pipe or depending how strong I need it. Sometimes I'll use DOM tubing. And it's generally not much bigger than an inch or 1.25 inch. I don't really get into 1.5-inch type tubing. Sometimes if it's a bigger one, I will. And then I build a kind of a triangulated structure frame with a plate on the bottom and a plate on the pole. So I have a mounting point on basically under its belly there, or in its crotch area. There'll be a mounting plate. And, when the bird is finished, that's kind of out of the way of the legs, out of the way of the tail feathers and stuff. And that seems to work out really well. And then I build kind of just a pipe sticking out for where the head would go. And then once I have that structural frame, and I've changed my design over the years, and I make the wings slip into a tube into a tube. So when it's done, it has 2 or sometimes 4 pieces of tubing coming out of the wing that slip into the shoulders of the wing of the body. So then the wings are you just slide them out and you can wrap them up for shipping. And then when they get there, they can just lift the wings and slide them back in. And the way I feather it in the end, I feather it so that there's, feathers on the body and feathers on the wings that kind of mesh together like a puzzle. So when the wings slide in, all the feathers kind of mesh with each other. And you can't tell that the wings were slipped on or off. There's no seam. They're seamless that way. So that's worked out really well over the years. And I've built, I've built quite a few now. I think I've got at least 12 or more birds under my wing, so to speak. So
yeah, I seen the one you did for the I guess it's a Harley Davidson dealership up there in Canada.
Yeah, so that was really one cool. of my that went to Calgary Harley in Alberta. Yeah, and that was one of the smaller ones that I've done. So that was probably the smallest one I've done, which is about 12 feet. That's probably the smallest one I've done. And then there's a fellow that had a bar in Grand Bend, Ontario, that bought a bigger one that I did with a beaver, and the beaver was hanging off the bottom of the eagle's talon and holding a beer, and it was supposed to be in a bar that was near the border, so there was lots of American clients and Canadian clients. So we wanted a mix of everything. So we did the American eagle and the beaver, and then the beaver hanging off the eagle with a beer in his hand, and it was supposed to be mounted over a stage where bands and stuff would play. And then the client had a falling out with his partner and got into a big legal battle and had some financial woes and ended up selling the eagle to a car lot. So now there's a car lot that has my eagle in it's called New Haven Automotive, I believe. And they're great. They post pictures of my eagle and the beaver. So they're not together anymore. The eagle's mounted on their fence and the beaver's in their office, and they dress up the beaver for their office.
For the holidays and stuff.
Yeah, for the holidays.
Got a beer in his hand?
So, yeah, he still has a beer in his hand, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I mean, like you build some really cool stuff. So like, what do you have in the works now? What are you working on now that you've got the dragon done? And I think you're pretty much buttoning up the T-Rex. What else are you working on now?
Yeah,
what's your next project?
T-Rex is my biggest project currently. And then I'm doing this really unique. It's really big. It's 10 feet wide. It's 24 feet tall. And then it's 10 feet wide by about 5 feet wide, and it's an abstract piece called Pearl of the Ocean. So I made a 48-inch ball. It's a welded steel ball made with 2 spun halves, like bowls welded together to make a ball. And then I took it up to my painter. My painter's working in a town over, the painter that used to work for me at the hot rod shop. I took it to him, and he did the bodywork and did the paint on it for me. And we painted it in a chameleon pearl color, so it looks like a big giant pearl. And the sculpture is titled Pearl of the Ocean. And it's going into a center feature of a big home in Cabo, Mexico. So the home is like 16,000 square feet. And the center of the home has an opening on the first floor, where from the basement up through the second floor is a big opening where the sculpture is going to be lifted through the skylight down into the home, and that will be the feature of the home in Cabo, Mexico. So the ball is all done and painted and beautiful, and the sculpture's actually completely fabricated now, and we're just doing some final welding and grinding and getting ready to do the mirror polishing on it. So,
that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. And so that's the one piece. And then the other piece is a person in Toronto that owns a little kind of coffee shop bistro hired me to do an abstract angel. And they sent me a rendering that artificial intelligence had done for them. So it's kind of this, I call it like a sorrow angel. It's abstract. There's no details, but it's got angel wings, and it looks like metal that's been turned into like wrapped tissue paper. Like if you were to take a balloon and kind of do the paper mache, with strips and paste strips around a paper mache balloon. That's kind of how this whole sculpture is made. It's like an angel, and you took the metal and wrapped it around the wire frame of an angel in paper mache strips. That's the only way I could describe it. It's really abstract, and it's really neat, and it's really challenging. So I've started the wire framing and the wings on that, and that's kind of how I'm going to approach it, is taking sheet metal and strips of sheet metal in different odd shapes and just kind of wrapping them around using a torch if I have to give it that kind of abstract paper mache kind of feel to it. So
now I would say with the paper mache, you're going to need like a what's that roller, like a bead roller, to like put all the different lines and stuff in it.
Yeah, my plan is to do round bar and to do layering like on the edges with round bar. So I'd weld it to round bar, and then the round bar would give it that step.
Okay.
And then grind the welds down, and then, and eventually, So lots of layering with round bar, lots of shaping with round bar, and lots of layering with sheet metal. So that was my plan.
Yeah, that's really cool. I can't wait to like check out your Instagram and see the progression on that one.
Yeah. Won't be long.
Yeah. Well, hey, before we get out of here, why don't you tell everybody where they can follow you? I know you've got a YouTube channel. You're on Instagram. I don't know if you do TikTok or LinkedIn or any of that stuff.
We are, yeah.
Send everything.
Yeah. So you can follow me on Metal Sculptor Kevin Stone on most platforms. So if you Google me, you can even hit Google Images. You'll find tons of my work on Google Images under Kevin Stone Metal Sculptor or Metal Sculptor Kevin Stone. On the platforms, Instagram and TikTok is with an underscore between each word. So Kevin _Stone _Metal _Sculptor. My wife's just showing me. Yeah, so Metal Sculptor Kevin Stone with underscores under each one for Instagram and TikTok. And you can find me under Metal Sculptor Kevin Stone on Facebook. And then our YouTube channel. And our YouTube channel is pretty new. We started about a year ago, and we're going to really try to promote our YouTube channel and do some fabrication and welding how-tos and maybe even some tips and tricks on how I shape metal and how I do my artwork. And our approach to our YouTube channel probably hasn't been as, for me, I need to get in front of the camera more, and I'm not used to that. Like, I'll stand there and explain a project or something, but I'm not used to just like we are right now, just talking to the camera and talking to, the audience and just kind of getting the audience to see my face and get to know me more. And so I'm going to really try to focus on that this year and do a lot more personal YouTube and explanations on how I approach my builds and what I'm working on, and just kind of like try to get that feel of like hanging out in the shop with me and watching me and seeing me do what I do. So
no, really cool. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Like, I know you're busy. I know you got a bunch of sculptures in your shop to kind of roll out, and you just changed shops. I appreciate you making time to come out, to talk to the listeners and tell them all about your history, what you're working on now, what you got coming up on the future, and, telling everybody how they can, like, watch you build this stuff. Because, like I said, it's really cool to see all of this come together. And then, then you shipping it out, and it's going to the final client. I mean, that'd be cool to see too, is the whole shipping process. Once it goes, maybe like throw a couple GoPros on that thing and just watch it go through the border and into its final resting home.
Exactly.
And the cranes and everything.
That's a huge aspect that I want to focus on in the new year here. Moving my T-Rex, installing it, the cranes, the whole operation. We have done some recent videos with all the sculptures being moved from my old shop to my new shop, and all that takes, and tearing down the Dragon, and putting it back together and all that. So I'm hoping to start documenting and showing a lot of that in the new year here. So
yeah, I think that'd be really cool, especially for the YouTube channel and stuff, which is a little bit longer form versus your Instagram Reels and TikToks and all that stuff. Like, do a longer form episode.
Exactly.
That'd be really cool to watch the process from start to finish. And then you could segment it up and make it 4 or 5, 6 episodes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, thanks again so much for coming out. I've really enjoyed chatting with you and learning about your whole process and your experience, and checking out these awesome life-size sculptures. It's been really cool.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today's episode with the one and only Kevin Stone. I hope you all enjoyed hearing his stories and insights and learned something new about the world of massive metal sculptures. If you want to learn more about Kevin and his work, be sure to check out his Instagram and YouTube channel. I'll drop the links in the show notes. And remember, if you liked the episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave me a rating and a review. Your support helps me bring even more amazing guests and content in the future. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.